started. So just hold on, let me switch off the camera here if it is there. Right, so as I mentioned to you that about the filters, so basically you have we are going to discuss basically low pass and then the high pass filters. So if you take as I mentioned to you, if you take the input across a register, if you take you take the input across the capacitor, then you constitute a filter which we call as a low pass. If we take, just unmute mute yourself, because it will be also recorded into all the disturbances. So please unmute yourself. Please mute yourself, not unmute. So let's see, and this is R and this is R and C here. Right, as I mentioned to you, if I give the, let's say, sinusoid as the input here. Right, so we know for the reactance of for the capacitance, for the capacitor, reactance is simply 1 over 2 pi f, we write down C, let's say. So what we do here, we need to, since we are measuring the output across the capacitor, V out and let's say V in. So V in is can you hear? Because there was some,
yes sir,
intermittent, there was some problem because on the screen I see that it was gone, MST, and then came back seconds. Okay, so just let me know in case there is a lag, what I am writing, what I am speaking. So let me know, right, in that case. So this is a let's say reactance. So what we can do, we can understand this basically if we let's say make it more generic. So what we can do, we can let's say consider in terms of the impedance, and this can be more generic one, let's say Z1 and Z2. So if Z1 is maybe resistor or Z1 can be your capacitor, so either of these configuration might be, we can work out. Right, so what we need to find out, say V in is the input voltage here, so V out, so this V out, simply since if the reactance for this is your XC, and see we are talking about its amplitude, so we basically, this impedance X plus XC square, and the V in this case your V out is your R over square root of R square plus X square V in. Right, so if we look it into onto this side, V out, so what we can write down further, this simplified little bit. So let's take the XC to be the reactance for the capacitor. If we take out, so we can rewrite this expression as a 1 plus R over XC square V in, and okay, and for then V out, just talking about the, let's say, low pass, V out over V in is simply, we can express 1 over 1 plus R over X C square. Right, now if we look into the characteristics for XC is the 1 over 2 pi FC. So what you see at when F tends to 0, when for, let's say, F is a low frequency, XC tends to infinity. Right, this reactance would be infinity, that goes to infinity, means that V out is same as what you get at the V in. Right, so as you change the frequency, as you increase the frequency, XC is decreases, and then that case you find out the V out keep on decreases. Right, so what we expect here in this In this case, as I mentioned, if you like F and this is V out over V in, let's say this is a what we call this simply gain ratio, because we are talking in terms of right now not in decibel, but decibel means we simply take out 20 log 10 of this quantity. So V out over V in, so F tends to 0 means let's say F is 0, then you have simply you would see that this is going to be like this, but as for ideal it should be like this, but since it's not ideal, you would expect a response something like this kind of like a response. So we always take a 3 dB point, as I mentioned to you on last Monday. So we always take a 3 dB point here that defines here the cutoff frequency, or let's say the corner frequency. Sometimes we call this a corner frequency or cutoff frequency. So 3 dB point means it is a in terms of the amplitude, or let's say in terms of the amplitude is become 1 by root 2, or basically in terms of the power level is at 50%, right? So we can estimate this as well. So that's this filter response, which this filter response we call as a first order filter response. Now if I look in terms of a high pass filter, I think we can same way we can estimate V out over.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, V out, sir, 3 dB point simply means V out by V in is 0.707, like.
It's a 1 by root 2. It comes by 1 by root.
Okay, okay.
So 1 by root 2 means it is a 0.70. So 3 dB point means 50% in terms of power. So because I'm talking about let's say in decibel gain in decibel scale 20 log 10 V out by V in, right? If you take it as a 3 dB point, if you take it as 3 dB, if we estimate, then it comes to V out over V in will be 1 by root 2. So
Okay,
basically when we call 3 dB, it's in terms of the power is a 50%, but in terms of amplitude is 1 by root 2.
So
So
3 dB is the value of G, right?
yeah, it's a gain.
Okay.
So basically when you plot it, so whenever let's say, since you will be doing the experiment also, so you are going to, let's say, frequency, and you are going to find out, let's say, this gain characteristics of the filter. So when you put up the, let's say, sinusoidal input voltage source, let's say, and then you change the frequency, you'll find out for the low frequencies as is remain almost same, because V out tends to V in till the certain point, but as you keep on increasing the frequency, the gain started decreasing, and then it becomes zero at one particular at keep on increasing frequency. So how to find out the roll off in the sense this transition. So how to find out the estimate the bandwidth or this frequency. So we generally estimate that this is 3 dB point, and basically 3 dB point nothing is V out over V in is your 1 by root 2. So it's a 0.7 or 70%. When the V in output voltage become almost 70% of the input voltage, so that corresponds to your 3 dB point, and when you draw and the frequency at which this happens, that frequency we call as a corner frequency or cutoff frequency for that filter. So it means that suggests that so all the frequency in this range, so that will pass through, but all the frequency in this outside this FC, it's going to be so it means that although frequency in this range, that will be stop, not allowed, but this is not allowed, but in this range from 0 to FC it will be allowed. So we generally use this low pass filter when we convert, let's say, AC to DC, because we want to create a DC source with you want to kind of like avoid any kind of like time variant, let's say, or the frequency dependent onto the output voltage. So we generally make use of this low pass filter there. So I think this we'll bring it once again when we discuss onto this rectification part. Right? Is clear?
Sir, how do we eliminate the noise of the high frequencies?
Generally we are going to, so it means if the high frequency, what's going to happen there, just hold on that. So basically, okay, let me give an example. So here I can plot it. So you get it actually this kind of like an output characteristics after rectification. After rectification, after filter, we let's say we get it this pulse kind of like a, because you're having kind of like this kind of like a response, right? So we get it after rectification. So we use the low pass filter. So low pass filter helps us to kind of like for the capacitor charging and discharging. So it's ripples. So we try to minimize the ripples as much as possible depending on to the value of the capacitor. Right, so the value of the capacitor is very much important here because the time constant. So we like to minimize this, though we cannot guarantee that it's a perfect DC. It's not a perfect DC. Some ripples would be there. We try to minimize ripples as much as possible. Right, and then after that stays, let's say after the low pass filter stays, we generally use a regulator part so that we know how much is a change is going to happen because there is a voltage level. It's going to vary. Suppose you want to create a 12 volt DC, but it may not be 12 volt DC, but maybe some kind of like it may vary certain range because of this nature. Right. So you have to use a low pass. So it means if you are using between this range, is simply acting as a low pass. So you are avoiding all high frequency component. But for the case of high pass filter, like this example, this will be something like you're going to have a at the 0 to f, you keep on increasing the frequency, but you'll find out I'm just drawing the first, let's say, ideal response. And so what you get actually, you will get it something like this response, you get it. So this is again for the gain, and this is a frequency. So this is your pass band, and this is your stop band. So the frequency that we, let's say, estimate here, let's say this is an FC. So the frequency greater than this cutoff frequency, right, is all will be passed, but frequency less than this cutoff frequency, it will be stopped. Right, so this is basically the high pass filter. So you can check it out. I think I just left it out here. So if we can just okay, let me complete it. Okay, just hold on 1 second. Right, for the high case of high pass filter, for case of high pass filter, as I mentioned, so V out is your R over square root of R square plus X square V in. So we can work out into this case V out over V in is your, you get it. Yeah, can you work out? Take the constant and then see what happens. Yeah, take the R is out from here, so it's a 1 over square root of 1 plus Xc over R square, and then see what happens at the low frequency and what happens at the high frequency. What's going to be high frequency? If f is, let's say, quite large, so it means Xc is tends to 0. It means that V out tends to V in, right? But for the low frequency, if the frequency is low, Xc is infinity towards infinity, right? It means that V out tends to 0, right? So this is something like mimicking, like you have 0, so V out. So let's say if you are plotting V out over V in here, so you don't see anything. This again is the output voltage 0, but as you keep on increasing frequency, there's an output voltage V out. So that's your the for the high pass filter. Right, so I'll just show you what happens. Maybe you can just hold on 1 second. So as I mentioned to you on the last time that we can use Falstead, or I think you might be told into your classes as well. Okay, are you able to see? So this is quite good, LT Spice, and this is a web based by LT Spice you have to download. So basically, okay, so there is a lag here right now. So you can, I'm just taking the inbuilt example, otherwise you can also create it. So let's say passive filters, I just put up, let's say low pass filter here. So, okay, let's combine. So, okay, so this is your source here. So I can change this characteristic behavior. So this is the maximum frequency, it go up to the 1 kilohertz. And this is time maximum voltage. So medium frequency start 20 hertz. What you see here actually, that as keep on increasing frequency, this output voltage, which is a gray color here, right, is a gray color here. It is keep on decreasing, right, as you go for increasing the frequency. But for the low frequency is almost the same, and this amplitude kind of like it decreases. So this is quite nice. You can try out by your own also. So we can do the settings change here also. We can see probably you can change the values here. Let's say if you decrease this, let's say to the 5 microfarad. Let's see what happens. What's going to happen if I just change the 5 microfarad? Now capacitor has been decreased. The value of capacitor has been decreased. If I decrease further, let's say. So what you see, if you look into the corner frequency 1 over 2 pi fc, so it means not 1 over 2 pi cr, right? That's a corner frequency. So it means if I keep on decreasing this c value, what's going to happen? The corner frequency is going to increase, right? So you are going to get the probably the constant region of the voltage going to take up, and then started falls off after a certain frequency range. So now you can think of whether what's the value of the, let's say we fix the resistor, and what value of the capacitor should be selected if you want to, let's say, create a DC source, right? So what value of the capacitor should be selected. So this is quite you can work out with your own also. This is a web base, and I can show you with this as well right now. I think because I have opened this right now, shared this with you. Let's edit this the source here. Okay, this is magnified. You can see. Okay, let it is. You can change the sweep time. That's fine, but I wanted to change this. Okay, just hold on. Okay, let's check it out. Okay, so one more thing, since I didn't mention about the RL, and since you are going to do this experiment in your as well, instead of having a capacitor, if I replace with the inductor, right, what's going to happen? So all of you can work out a little bit mathematics, because for reactance for the inductor is simply omega L, so 2 pi F and multiplied by L, that's the inductance value of the inductor, right? And then you can estimate what's going to happen for the low pass and what's for the high pass, right? See the difference between, you can observe the difference between the, if you use the, so what kind of like in what scenario one should use this RL combination, and what scenario one should use the RC. right? So this is kind of like check it out, try to give a thought process. You can mathematically you can just work out with this. That's as I mentioned just now, the mathematically as well you can see from here. So I just wanted to add here one, just hold on, let's see if I can find it out source. Okay, so this is high pass, but it's with the okay, I think it's fine now. So this is one of the circuit, let's say for high pass filter, but you're replacing the source. Instead of having a sinusoidal, you're replacing it with the with this pulse response, which is your square wave input, let's say, and this act as an differentiator. So I'm going to explain. So I just thought before I switch to the PowerPoint slide, just to show you about what's happens here. Right, so basically that's I think I'm going with the capacitor charging and discharging. Since we are going to measure the input, we are going to measure the output across this resistor here. Right, so that's VR, simply it will be I multiplied by the current which is flowing through the circuit multiplied by the voltage drop, or let's say the resistance value. So I, and this I is simply uh, current that's flowing through the capacitor. For the capacitor, for such kind of like a the voltage, very high voltage levels, because it's you can edge, it doesn't respond. So it started responding when it's become a flat, right? So it doesn't kind of like a quickly charge. It's not that it charges very quickly. So what's going to happen when you measure the voltage across this, we see a kind of like this spike. So by changing the value of R and C here, it's possible, or change the frequency. Let's say if I change the frequency, let's say if I go for 100 hertz, let's see what's going to happen. And if I change, now you can see the response. Let's say it's 500. You see the different waveform is generated. So I can just have, I think let's click on this. I need to maximize it. Okay, and let's see the so what you see here, you can see the shape of the pulse, output pulse is now changed because you have changed the frequency. So frequency means the time constants now. If you look at these are the fixed quantities. Let's say C and R is fixed, so time constant is fixed. But you have changed the frequency means if you increase the frequency, means you decrease the you have decreased the time period, right? You decrease the time period of the functions of the input, or let's say the voltage source here. So it depending on to the whether you are into the regime, whether you are into the time constant, if the
Excuse
time
me, sir.
constant. Yes,
Sir, that bottom signal, the green one, is across resistor or capacitor?
is across the resistor. The bottom one is
Okay.
output. What you see here is across the across the resistor, not across the capacitor. This is across the resistor.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
agree to explain with this mathematics. I thought just to first let me because I am right now onto the on the sharing this window. So I thought just to show you the demonstrate this, and mathematically I'm going to explain you what's going to happen. Anyway, you're going to do this experiment in your through the virtual with the VLab or Falstad Reality Spice. So you'll see the similar kind of like a behavior. So this is the upper one is the input. This one is the input. The square wave is the input, and the output is your the shown in the below. Right. So if I change, let's say, let's go to the decrease now. Let's say put up 20 or let's say 50 hertz. Okay, and then you have to run it once again. So what you see here, okay, this is not right. You can write this. We cannot dock space. So this is your input and this is your output. So if I change, let's say, if I just swap the position, let's say if you swap the position of these two elements, let's say this is resistor and this is now capacitor here. So we can try out, we can do this one. If there's an inbuilt, I just want to use the inbuilt so that I can save some time. Else we can try out, we can do it by our own also. So passive filter, band pass, notch twin, and other passive circuits. So where it was there, you had a differentiator. So integrator, it is not there, right? So what we can do here, let's say cancel this one, you can delete and you can draw here, let's say add register. All right, okay, and then thus we can draw it. Add capacitor here. If we just see it now, okay, I had to get the value here, sorry, I think it's too high, might be. Something is 1K and 10 microfarad is the output. You don't see the output here. V in scope. Okay, and then I can combine. So there actually current is also shown. So let's hold on, let me go into this maximum scale properties. I don't need to show the current so that you don't get confused. Right. So what you see here, when you change it now, the different waveform. So it can go from the, let's say, sawtooth wave to triangular wave is possible to do it. So is a low pass filter again, but your input has been changed. Input source instead of sinusoidal, it's now your pulse response, that is square wave, has been given. So what we can do it. What's the advantage of this kind of like let's say circuits is that you want to generate say triangular wave, you want to generate a kind of like with certain different slope, right? So it's possible to generate by using this combination of circuits, right? So if I change it the frequency, you'll see that different kind of like if I let's say go for 500 here, I have to just change actually its resolution here. So you have to go ahead. So What you see here, you can see. You got it. Okay, let's go ahead here. Let's stop this right now. Stop. Right, you can see it's become a linear, but of course the level will be decreased, so it's become linear depending on the combinations here that we have selected for the value of the resistor and the capacitor. So if we change to the sinusoidal here, it simply goes back to the kind of like act as a low pass filter. But if you change from sinusoidal to the square wave input, it simply behaves as an integrator. For this case, for high pass configuration, for high pass filter like circuit, it goes as it behaves as an differentiator. So you can see that different kind of like pulses can be generated. Different kind of pulses can be generated. It's possible to generate different kind of pulses or different kind of waveforms. It's possible to generate by these two circuits. All right. So let's go back into the.
Sir,
Yes. Yeah.
could you please tell what you mean by integrator and differentiator in the circuit?
Sorry. Just hold on. What's happening here? Differentiator means like if you have the input. So simply if you have the voltage, which is let's say of the form of sine of omega t, right? If you have a sine of omega t function, and if I want to differentiate, what's the differentiation of sine of omega t? You want to create, let's say, some kind of so you should get it something like that, right? So same thing for the integrator. So is integrator means simply finding the area under the curve. So that's so pulse. So we use the pulse response waveform. So this kind of like so that I mean to say. So you can create a kind of how do you create this integrator and differentiator? That's a functionality in calculator. How do we create this functionalities in a calculator?
No idea, sir.
So we use integrated circuits basically. So it means we make use of such kind of like a circuit, but not because resistor is it's a very discrete component, big, and same as a capacitor. So instead of using a discrete component R and C, if you see the calculator, right, Handel scientific calculator, if you see, is everything is integrated circuit. So basically we go for the transistor bit, transistor not BJT, but is basically metal oxide semiconductor that we call as a field effect transistor, MOSFETs. So basically FET based transistors, and FET based transistors made in combination to behave as a resistor, to behave as a capacitor, and that we utilize so that we can change by applying the voltages. Is possible to change the kind of like their behavior is possible. So it means, so we make use of not of course the discrete component, but for making better understanding, to make you understand how the system works here. Let's say integrated differentiator. There's one example. So you may see some addition, multiplier, subtraction also using op-amp and then kind of different. So all those mathematical functionalities that we realize, how do we realize in hardware? How do we realize in hardware? Like say you have the calculator, right? How do we realize that how it is working? If you look into the CPU computer, right? Whenever you open it, let's say you want to add the simple, let's say, so how it is working, and whether it's a software, whether it's a, let's say, calculator, I mean to say, how it is working. So you're giving certain commands, so it means changing the voltage label that's going, and that functionality is getting activated. So to make you understand what happens, how does it work? So this is a basically a kind of like a onto the discrete component level. We are just explaining about this behavior.
Okay, sir.
Is clear? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I think what I asked you onto the, I think last time also I mentioned to you this how the capacitor charges and discharges. I think all of you know that capacitor get fully charged when it is is around 5 tau. 5 tau means T is your time constant of the circuit. So it's get fully charged. So that's the reason you see the different kind of waveforms are coming generated. So if you're input frequency. If your capacitor is not fully charged, so it may something here. So you are generating a kind of like a this kind of like a linear waveform. But if it is a kind of like a time constant of the input signal, let's say the pulse which is giving is larger than the 5 tau, then it's going to fully charge, and then you're seeing a kind of like a this kind of like a wave pattern, right? Output. So depending on to the, if you're decreasing the, whether you're decreasing time constant circuit, means you're changing the capacitor resistors value, or you're changing the input frequency, right? You're simply changing the different kind of waveforms depending on to how the capacitor charges and discharges. And the same way it happens. So what you see in kind of like a spike one, when you see the spikes as an output for the, when you measure output across register. So this is something for this circuit, you get it, and this is something like onto this one. So this is for LPF, low pass one, and this is for the high pass filter combination. But if we give the input as an instead of sinusoidal, if we, let's say this one, you get it like a spikes. So this acts as a differentiator. And this is act as an integrator. If you give the, let's say, but if I change, let's say, if I change this to, let's say if I change the source as sinusoidal, in this case, it simply acts as a low pass filter. That's you get a response, something like this. In this case, if I change it, let's say sinusoidal is an input, you get an output, something like this. Right, so this is act as a high pass filter. So depending on, so, and also it's important how, from where you are measuring. So this becomes very important throughout this, let's say when we talk about all this the course, this, how do you measure the output, whether you're measuring output across a resistor, whether you're measuring output across a capacitor, whether you're measuring output across a diode, or let's say there's some different combinations. So this output waveform or the voltage levels, of course it changes, it will be different, right? So how, so I think that's what you have seen it through that simulator.
Sir,
Yes.
why do we, I mean, design the circuit in such a way like resistor is before and capacitor is after the resistor? Like you designed separate circuits for the low pass filter and high pass filter, but
Yes.
can't just the value of capacitor decide the property of the filter?
Yes, it's possible. For filter, it's only, you mean like only capacitor alone?
Like, can you please go to the previous slide, sir?
Yes.
So like in the LPF,
Yes.
you have first placed the resistor, then you have placed the capacitor.
Capacitor.
So the
Yes.
thing is, we are interested in the value of the capacitor. If the value is, I mean,
Okay.
like,
So let me go back to here now. All right. So if we look into this one, right? So what's happening? So if I just take, let's say is becomes simply 1 over R over XC. XC is your reactance of the capacitor, which is 1 over 2 pi FC, right? So you can have the C, you can change the, as I mentioned, you can change the value of C. I think I also shown you into the, onto
Sure.
through the simulator. So what we needed, we wanted to, we would like to create a filter which passes the low frequency component, but stop the high frequency component. So it means for the low frequency component, if we f tends to 0, so reactance becomes very large, value infinity, and this term becomes 0. So it means your V out is almost V in. So there is no kind of like a drop, but actually when you look into the practically, right, there is a certain drop. It's not always a 1, but it'll be 0.9 something. It's not exactly 1. Right, is a 0.9 something when you look into physically, not on virtual mode, but when you look into the physically, when you, because you are going to connect through the wires, and so there's the losses are there, so little bit. So that number is not exactly V out is equals to V in always. So V out is always less than small value less V in, right? So that's, so what you need to, so you need to have this combination. So alone, you are not going to have this only alone capacitor, means like if you have a alone capacitor, what's going to happen is simply store the charge unless there is no discharge mechanism is involved. But yeah, all the wires connection all has a resistance value, so it's always there is a discharge path available for the for charge to discharge through that path actually.
Okay, sir.
Right.
Thank. I've got it. Sir.
Okay. So this is what I think I've shown you about. So we have the, let's say, square wave input signal, and depending on to the how which regime you're working, or you change the time constant here, you can generate different waveforms like a sawtooth. It can be your triangular, or is a low frequency. It may be remain the same, but as you change the going frequency, it may be kind of sawtooth wave is possible, and this is a triangular wave. So same thing happens for let's say for the combination. When you make the output, we measure the output across the register, and let's say depending on to the frequency, I think I've shown you this case as well, and this also spikes. So this is an intermediate somewhere here. So this also present. So how does it work actually? So that's let me explain you, and then we would have 5 minutes break after this, and we start about the semiconductor physics. So for case of so this is, let's say, the integrator, and this is your differentiator. So this is you're having a V out, this is V in, you're measuring V out, right? So for now, if we take at let's say the current that's going, what we need to find it out, we need to, let's say, current that's through the capacitor, since we are measuring output voltage across the capacitor. So IC, if we calculate, is simply the value of capacitor and dVc over dt, and the current that's flowing through the IR same branch is the same as here. So IR, let's say the component of IR is same as an IC, let's you can say as an I, for example. So IT is simply, I think this is what you get, C dVc over dt. So what is the output V out? So V out will be simply a voltage across the capacitor is a Q by C, which is your Q is, you can write down in terms of the di over dt. So that's the 1 over C I of dt. Actually this I is nothing, is your I just made it from here. So V out, we can simply write down 1 over C I, which is your T dt. So this is, it means that's your 1 over RC, and that's your V in, which is a time dependent dt. So that's how the mathematics works here. So you get it, this is nothing, is the time constant of the circuit. So this is a time constant of the circuit. So your input this is the input, so it's the input signal, so 1 over RC and the integral. So that's the reason we call this as an integrator, right? And case of differentiator, this what we need to calculate, again V out is your here, oh I made this is R, sorry, this is R, this is C here, and wrongly, but this is here. So V out is your VR, current that flows through the capacitor is C dV in over dt, like dV in over dt. So V out is VR is R into IR. So this is nothing, voltage across the resistor. So I into R resistance. So I is the same as current. So what you get it here, R into C dV in over dt. So that's your V out. So what you see here, this is a time constant the circuit, and the term which you see is a differentiator. So the output voltage now is you get at a differentiation of the first order differentiation of the input voltage, whereas on the left hand side this is your comes in integral. So now you can see.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, so can these property of integrating and differentiating be used to solve mathematical functions?
We do generally, yes, but there's a program, of course, protocols is there, but hardware part, I mean like hardware part, yes, we integrate in the same way.
Okay,
So
so
we do
technically
use
there is no problem, but hardware
Yes.
hardware poses some challenges.
Yes. So what we do here, so instead of, let's say, discrete, if you see in the discrete components, so the capacitor, something like, let's say, the green color or something, you have seen it with the 2 lag, right? And the resistor is like you have seen it, right? Yesterday I've shown you. So we realize this, instead of having a discrete component, basically we go with the MOSFET base, kind of like a transistor based, and this transistor is not a discrete transistor component, but is an integrated transistor, which we call as a field effect transistors. So by using certain features, certain reason, or the characteristics of the FET, we can make sure that this FET act as a resistor, this FET act as a capacitor. So MOS as a capacitor, yes, possible. MOS as the MOS means a metal oxide semiconductor, so we generally call as a very short form MOS. So that's the FET, so short form of the FET. So basically we make the combination of those so that we act as a capacitor as also resistor. Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
here we are taking V in equal to IR. Why is that? I mean, no C component for V in.
No.
C component. I mean, it is supposed to be I into root over R plus X XC square, R square plus XC square, something like. Why?
Yeah, I just give it not. I didn't go into more detail into pole analysis. What you're talking about? Yes, we can do that complex analysis just for understanding. I am giving you the theory. This is definitely yes for understanding. What you're saying, yes, we can do for that complex analysis. It will be. It can be go into. We can go into that complex analysis part. I've just given a kind of broad, kind of like a idea. How does it work? I didn't do on the complex analysis part here. That we call it pole analysis. Yes.
Sir, in integrator part, you wrote that IR is equal to IC, but that will only be valid if nothing is connected across the terminals of V out.
V out, nothing connected in the sense, yes, the current is flowing. So it's the same. We are measuring it as a probe.
I mean, if we connect some load or something else, then IR will not be equal to IC.
Yeah, in that case, no. Considering ideal conditions. So see, the idea of this method is very simple. It's not. I didn't go in detail, in the sense because that's not required also, of course. But if you want that, we like to work on the complex analysis part, we can do it. That, but it's not a part of our syllabus. Just only to match to map up with the laboratory, because in lab we are going to do the experiment onto the pulse response. This we call as a pulse response for RC and CR, of course, and the frequency response, since you're going to perform. So this act as an integrator, this act as a differentiator. This is in a broad idea how this things works. So
Sir,
make it understand. Yeah.
so we have an ideal voltmeter across V out terminals
Yes, that's you can consider.
in the lab experiments.
Right. In the lab experiment, when you do it in the physically, it is not.
In the
So I
like
think you
virtual
get
lab.
oscilloscope. You have the oscilloscope. So when you see in the when you look into oscilloscope, I think I am planning that we like to show you this. I know, but yeah, since on Tuesday, but I think you might be able to see that from your friends. You can ask from Monday section 1, and we see some other teachers also request them to. What's the plan? We are going to make a video or the realistic experiment that we are going to perform in the lab, and so that we can have a look. It's not a, so we are going to connect oscilloscope here. So oscilloscope is not an ideal, right? And you have the wires which is going to connect it. So it means these are the it's not an idealistic situation. It's a more practical situation. And the if you look into the output voltage, it's always a less. then the input voltage here as well. There is a drop.
Sir, in differentiator, the second line ICT is equal to C dV in T. That will be dV across capacitor, no? In differentiator second line.
Yes, it is across the capacitor. Deep in the sense,
But
since you are giving a pulse, so as I mentioned to you, okay, so you are giving this kind of input, right? So the capacitor may not really act very fast for sharp rise. It may not, because it's a sharp change, so may not kind of like respond. But capacitor started responding onto this edge, so it may not charge quickly. It may not charge quickly.
V in and VC are different, na?
Yeah. So that's in a voltage across the VC. So yes, you can express. So I think we seen depending on to again the value. Okay, depending on to the input frequency. Suppose if we are having a 5 tau, it may consider the same in the same situation. If your time constant, or let's say the input time period t, if it is almost as in a 5 tau, in that you can consider.
Okay, sir.
In that situation, you can assume. In that situation, you can assume that VC is an V in. Because okay, I think what's the equation for the output capacitor, the voltage across the capacitor? VC is basically, when you look into the RC, VC is equals to, when you measure the output across the capacitor, V naught 1 minus exponential minus T by something like this, right? V naught means, let's say, the V in, and basically this is 1 minus exponential minus T by RC, right? You agree?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Right. Yeah, so now you can assume the situation. Same thing for here also. And for this case, this is for charging, and same thing for discharging. You can, for discharge, I think it is a V naught exponential. So V naught means V in, exponential minus T by RC. Am I clear?
Yes.
So if you have the value of the capacitance is large, so it will take longer time to fill that, of course, to get all the get charging. And if you have a larger value of resistance, I think you know this. That's the reason I mentioned. I thought I mentioned that you should go a little bit charging and discharging. I thought all of you are aware, so I just started with this concept. So this is the basic equation for the charging, and discharging is VC is simply V in exponential minus T by RC. Okay, fine.
So one question, sir.
Yes, tell me.
In the previous slide, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, it is the slide. Sir, sir, up to this, in the integrator part, the V out equals to 1 by C integral of I dt, it is correct.
Yeah.
Sir, then you are directly writing V in by, and you are writing that as V in by R. So how is that?
Yeah.
So how is that justified? Because it will not, the current is not V in by R, because the capacitor will play some role in the current, right?
Yes. It has,
So
but under certain approach. Okay, so yes.
So for an example, if you pass a DC in it, sir,
Yes.
the last equation basically says that the voltage in the capacitor rises to infinity with time. So if you pass a DC,
Yes.
the last equation will say that. So,
Yes.
but that is
If
not
you
the
take
case,
a
right?
DC, if you take a DC, yes, yeah.
So this equation is not correct, right, sir?
Just for understanding, means of course, is not because I mentioned to you this. I have not done any detailed analysis on the mathematical one, because one complex analysis. Just to make you understand, this is let's very get integral. That was the motive behind this. But if you want that, I can take up that one. No issue. I can explain in more detail on this filter with the complex analysis part. If you all of you are interested, definitely I can do it.
Okay, sir.
Right. So what we do here, we take a, let's say, 5 minutes break, if we are fine with it.
Sir,
Yes.
in the break, please stop the recording, because then
Yes.
and then after that we can start again.
Sure. I've done it. So let's 5 minutes break. Okay. So now actually we like to discuss on to the semiconductor. It will go on the physics as well as I think on some, then later on onto the, I think today target would be till the PN junction if we can reach us. Okay, just basics. So all of you know about we have the three generally that started the journey of the, let's say, the electronics. Let's say we started with the, because the material is one of the most important. So we have the silicon, germanium, and people also explored gallium arsenide. So this is a compound material. This is a elemental element, a single element, silicon, germanium. So started with the germanium, but germanium has been let's say the processing and everything is if you look into economical side is quite expensive to material, whereas on silicon has been found abundant, like lot of we can process using a sand, basically silica. So it's much possible to, so most of the devices, since at those working temperature conditions we make use of the silicon. So silicon, if you look into the silicon structure, so these are the an example of semiconductor. Of course, these are example of semiconductors. And if you look into certain devices, so this also falls in the category of, let's say, indirect. I think I will come back. Indirect band gap semiconductor, where this is in your direct band gap semiconductor. So just to give an example, what's mean by indirect, we don't have any, let's say, we don't have any source, right? LED is not made of silicon, though we make all normal electronic diode using the same PN junction theory. We make use silicon, but silicon at the same time, it's not emitting any light, right? It's not emitting light. So since it falls in the category of indirect band gap, where is this comes gallium arsenide and other materials comes into the category of the direct band gap, right? So I'll explain you what I mean to say indirect and direct band gap, I think, later on. So silicon base, which is atomic number, I think all of you, if you remember, is the 14, right? So it has an if you look into configuration, so in outermost cell, there's the 4 valence electrons are there. So when you look into, let's say, a piece of, let's say, silicon pure sample, I'm talking right now in the pure sample. Pure sample means there is no kind of like a defect, there is no foreign atoms, there is no impurities which are there in this material, right? So if we consider those, so that we call as an false category of intrinsic semiconductor, right? These are all the intrinsic semiconductor having no kind of defects, no impurities, no foreign atoms. Foreign atoms, like there is no other doping, nothing is happened. So this we call as an intrinsic semiconductor. So it has a silicon. If I consider silicon, it has a 4 valence electrons in outermost cell. So what means this in a, it's in a tetravalent. So tetravalent means it's when look into the, when if you look into the, it's packing into, let's say, crystal structure. So basically it's a silicon, and then you have the 4 valence electrons. So it is a packed so they are in triatomic distance, so it shares they are packed, they're sharing the electrons, valence electron with the covalent bonds. So these are all the covalent bond, very weak bonds. So it means if there is an any supply of energy, any supply of energy means, let's say, you change the temperature. So basically all this the semiconductors, let's say at the low temperature, let's say 0 Kelvin, at low temperature, let's say it's a 0 Kelvin, it behaves as an insulator. It behaves as an insulator means that there is no free electrons for conduction for the movement. There are no free electrons, right? So this behaves simply as an insulator, right? So whenever you supply energy, let's say at the room temperature, so it means thermal energy. So due to the thermal agitation, and that's energy sufficient to overcome the band gap of for the silicon. For the case of silicon at the room temperature, for the silicon at room temperature, the band gap for the silicon is approximately 1.1 electron volt. For the silicon at the room temperature, this band gap energy is around 1.1 electron volt. So it means if the thermal agitation is sufficient that it can overcome to 1 electron volt, and the covalent bond may break. And this covalent bond break means now electrons may free to move, right? It's free to move. And when it's leaving the space, let's say whenever it's leaving the space, what's going to happen is going to create a vacancy. Is going to create a vacancy. It means like it's going to create a void, and this effectively we call this a void. This we call as since electron has left space, so it's a negative charge, so it leave a positive charge vacancy. Vacancy in the sense I will call a void. So that has been called as a hole, right? And so it means electrons is now that electron is now free to move, right, within this lattice. So because thermal, it may not one bond is broken, but maybe let's say multiple bond may be broken, and then you have the certain flow of electrons. The electron which is free now. Let me show with the different colors. I think that will be better. So let's say electron which is free now. So what's going to happen is moving into the system, and it may some hit from the another stationary atom silicon. It may scatter. So it may scatter in a kind of scatter in the sense it goes to another place, and there is a stationary silicon atom, and there is a stationary silicon atom onto this crystal lattice. So it's keep on, so flight of direction keep on changing, but it doesn't result into any net flow of the net flow of charge, right? So it doesn't result really into net flow of charge. So this one which we call as so it means the average distance between these collisions, when you make a collision between a stationary atom, is what we call as a mean free path. So since your motion is random, so it means that number of electrons that may, let's say if you consider any kind of cross section path during for a given time is become average. If you take a random average, is almost zero. So effectively there is no kind of like a charge flow, means no current. Average current is zero. So silicon is basically mostly used, as I mentioned to you, and because it's abundant nature, its processing is be done. So all electronic devices are being used silicon, but definitely germanium is, on the other hand, it also is quite useful. So though it's expensive, but we can create definitely several devices. We don't have any I'll mainly say for detection part, we most of the time we use germanium based kind of like devices. Gallium arsenide has been used for creating certain devices. As I mentioned to you, give an example of, let's say, all of you seen the TV remote, right? You have all the remotes, TV remote or your disk writer in your laptop or desktop. It has a small LED. It's kind of like a small LED, right, which you communicate. So that's basically is a gallium arsenide around 79 to 810 nanometer. It's basically is based on this material system. It's not on silicon and germanium, right? So if I given a concept of let's say, since I mentioned about to the band gap, so all of you are aware that okay, this is here the valence band. Okay, so I should have written okay here. Okay, that's better. Valence band, and this is a conduction band. And for an intrinsic, if there is no doping, nothing, the band gap is separated with the 1.1 electron volt for the silicon. The band gap for silicon again is in a wavelength depend. Oh, it's a temperature dependent, right? And what was talking about, so you have the some free, there is no free electron, but due to thermal agitation, the electrons which might be the free now, it gets the energy, sufficient energy to acquire and can go into the conduction band. And this thermal energy simply is, can be driven by the voltage band statistics, but let's assume so it creates a vacancy right here. So this is situation, and if you look into the energy diagram, energy and movement. So since I have introduced you about the indirect and direct band gap, so let me give you an idea what I mean to say here. So basically, it's your energy is a p square by you get a momentum, and so if you plot it, so it's not very good drawing. So if it is so lowest of the conduction band and the upper of the, let's say, of the valence band, so this is a valence band, this is a conduction band here. So if they falls into the same momentum, same, this is a on the x-axis is the momentum, this is the momentum vector k, and this is energy here. So if they falls into the same line, so this is a match to say it mean delta k is this change is 0. So this situation, this scenario we is represent for the direct band gap. So whenever the electron, so whenever there is an electron is going to a conduction band, it may come back, it may relax into the ground state, means it can come to the, let's say, valence band, and when it combines with the hole which is there, right, it may release an energy. So always the recombination is not that because thermal agitation you have always free covalent bonds is broken, and always you have free carriers like electrons and also, but it may happen that it may also recombination. So both recombination may also take place, and the rate of recombination might be less than the generation. So because of recombination, whenever there's an electron and the hole, let's say, combine, it releases an energy. It releases an energy which is something like h nu, corresponding to the wavelength difference between these two levels. So releases energy. So if in case of the direct band gap material, this energy release comes as a terms of the photon light, but in case of the indirect band gap material, so if I let's say if we have the valence band here, but let's say conduction band is lowest is somewhere here, so they are not onto the, so lowest of the conduction band and upper maximum of the valence band, they are not into the same momentum line. So in this case, the energy which comes within a, let's say, it's not is phase matching, or say I would say this conservation, because delta k is not 0 here, so it's not delta k is not 0 here because they are not coming to the same line. So energy which recombination takes place in silicon as well, because it's in a case of indirect band gap. So that energy, how does it go? Where this energy goes? Where there is a recombination, the energy goes in terms of the simply as a heat to the system. Simply it goes into the lattice vibrations, or let's say we call them phonons. So it simply transfer the energy into the lattice as in form of the heat, right? But in case of the direct band gap materials, such as an example of gallium arsenide, or and can be indium gallium on some combinations for the compound of semiconductors, is a direct band gap material. So the energy goes in form of light energy, this light in form of photons, whereas in case of indirect band gap, there is an example of silicon or germanium example. So this goes the recombination, due to recombination the energy goes into the system in form of heat, right? So this is the basic difference between the why we couldn't have the any kind of like there is no we couldn't make the LEDs from the silicon, not possible, right? We don't have, but by doing certain latest development, people also claim that we can get a lasing out of silicon by doing a strain engineering. Strain engineering means creating certain strain into the lattice system so that they match the this momentum, and they may get the energy, but may not be very sufficient, very high energetic source, right? So what I just give an overview right now. So what we get it actually from the silicon, basically we make a, yes
Sir, sir, can you explain once more why both the graphs don't align in the indirect gap?
So okay, so this is a band gap formation. Okay, I didn't go on to, okay, if we, how do we this band edges forms actually, basically, so big from the density matrix, if you understand mathematically, but there is a kind of a splitting happens. So it's something, if you consider, let's say, if we have, how do I explain it in a very simple way? So what you see actually is in a more on continuous. So this is energy is, I think, the p square by 2m. So the momentum. So if I plot it, so you get a parabolic, something like a parabolic onto this side. This is anything, these are the energy states. These are simply energy states which are there. So this is the energy state of onto the kind of like a, so this energy state so become almost a continuum. So it's basically what we draw it here is something like this line. So it's something like a continuous. So there's a different states continuum it happens. So it's in valence band. So for direct band gap material, as per the theory, like if you are asking me how do we get it this one, or why does it happen?
Why does it happen?
Okay. Okay. So yes, so when we plot as per the for the silicon, when we plot the, let's say, an energy band diagram for the silicon, it's lowest of the, it comes into this point. I don't have exactly the correct answer at this moment for this, because I need to look into this mathematical portion. So I don't have right now. So what we understand when you look into the E, I think P square by 2m, basically, if I remember it correctly. So energy and this momentum. So it's the band edges for the conduction band is slightly shifted onto the momentum on the right side, whereas case of valence band, it's something like this.
Okay, sir, what are the plotted on the x and y axis?
This is xn is a k momentum or p, and y is your energy. So I'm p or the k, like momentum. So this is a momentum, energy, moment conservation, momentum, and this is a momentum, and this is energy.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, are they coplanar?
Are they?
Coplanar, I mean, are they coplanar both?
No, actually, you are talking about a lattice. So lattice, talking about a silicon lattice, with a silicon, not one atom. There's a kind of like a 10 power 22 large number of atoms there. Let's say if I consider small 1 centimeter cube block, if I consider 1 centimeter cube, let's say block of a silicon, then around you have 10 power 22 atoms. So my density is packed. So that's the reason instead of having splitting, you don't see any splitting. But what you see a continuous kind of like a continuum you see onto the band gap. So this kind of band structure, it comes because of the we solve these equations mathematically. It's become more okay. I think I can give you this maybe later on. I can discuss. I have to just get back, refresh the solid state. I think I can get back to you with the help of some mathematics.
Okay,
Sure,
sir.
that's it. You're from physics or mechanical? You're from physics.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So okay. So anyway, I think you must. Okay, you might be also going through the same in solid state physics there, and
Sir,
I can
we are
explain
in
you.
the fourth year. We have 2
Yeah?
years later, I think.
It is in the second year.
Fourth year,
Oh,
perhaps.
that's in the
That solid
fourth year.
state things. So
Okay.
it's time.
I got a point. Like this is okay because I need to have give you little ideas onto the quantum mechanics in the sense, because I'm talking onto the nanometer angstrom scale. So all this physics is going to be driven by the quantum mechanics in the sense we used to have what you call Floquet. I know block Floquet theorem because in a periodic structure, this is one silicon atom, another silicon atom, another silicon atom. So this is all the silicon atom which are packed into a lattice. So we solve and then we get it this. But physics, what's happening into point of physics, I think I can explain to you later on. Is okay? Maybe tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll do it. Yeah, tomorrow I think I can make it very clear. So the message I'd like to take out here from what I mean to say here, since your this is your indirect band gap material. We make all electronic devices out of silicon or germanium. That's all the normal electronic diode, everything. But when you look into these might be not suitable for direct band for, let's say, devices such as LEDs. We don't make it because of there's no light emission takes place because the recombination rate, the efficiency of the recombination, and since it doesn't satisfy the energy momentum conservation in the sense they are different. In direct band gap, the energy releases to the system in form of heat, but there's useful. So silicon, if I take an example of silicon based devices other than diode, any other thing you have in mind? Anybody else? Anyone? Which you have seen or you are aware? other than diode? Diode transistor other than any other big scale?
Solar cell.
Yes, solar cell. Yes, solar cell is made on silicon, but still efficiency is around 10 to 20%. People are trying to increase the efficiency of silicon base. The biggest reason is for using a silicon is, as I mentioned to you, that you can abandon it in nature, so you can use it, and easy to now process. Now manufacturing or fabrication has become so well advanced and well established that we use a silicon or germanium. Of course, the processing, of course, and you need a material to process. Right, so we use okay, so okay, let me continue from here. So it means that for the for the intrinsic semiconductor, so let's say consider example of silicon here. So you have the pure, as I mentioned, let's say if you have thermal agitation, if you're talking at the room temperature, so it means the electrons, whenever there is a covalent bond is broken, so at the same time, so let's say the electron releases from here, so it is generating a positive charge vacancy that we call as in a hole, right? So electron moves here, so it means whenever there is a covalent bond broken, so electron and holes are being generated simultaneously, right? Hole is being generated. Let's say I will say use the term generated because the electron move from this place, right? So it's leave the vacancy, that's a hole. So it means one electron become free as well as the one hole is also become free. So it means the concentration of hole should be as the same as the concentration of the electron at the room temperature. So it means that will be your concentration of, let's say we call as an intrinsic carrier concentration. So if I denote the concentration of a hole as an P, so it was a concentration of the electrons, free electrons, right? And that should be the intrinsic carrier concentration. So carrier means that you're either the hole and the electrons, right? So this is the intrinsic carrier concentration. So that means your intrinsic carrier concentration, and this intrinsic carrier concentration depends on temperature, because your band gap also depend on temperature. It depend on temperature. So it means what's happening, the band gap basically changes, it decreases with the temperature of with the as you decrease as you increase the temperature, not I sorry this comment, as you increase the temperature, the band gap decreases. So it means as you go increasing, so carrier concentration is because now energy is sufficient, right, to go for the become free electrons, quite high energy thermal energy. Increasing the temperature means you're providing more thermal energy to the system, so it means the carrier concentration also changes, and that's increases. So both electrons and holes and electrons contribute to the conduction process, right, and then associate with it. So how do we okay, just so it if we just okay from here, so the and I square, that's intrinsic carrier concentration, we can express in terms of the exponential minus EZ over KBT. So this B is your is a material dependent parameter. So B is your, this is your material dependent parameter. So basically this expression actually we get it, those who are in physics, you may learn it from the solid state physics later on. Basically this parameter comes from the, because since we are introducing the band concept, so number of the carrier density, in the sense number of electrons per unit volume which are in conduction band, number of carriers which are into the valence band and conduction band. So basically this number comes from their B. So I'm just giving you material dependent parameter, some number right now, and this number basically comes from there. So this is your around, this value is around 5.4 into 10 power 31, and the band gap for the silicon EZ at the room temperature considering 300 Kelvin, 1.12 electron, 1.1 electron volt, and Kb is your Boltzmann constant. This is your Boltzmann constant, which is 1.38 in 10 power minus 23 SI unit joule per Kelvin. Right, so we can estimate the carrier concentration, of course, for silicon, and I simply be square root to 3 by 2 minus Eg 2 kBt. So that we can give an estimate. So this is roughly, if we calculate, so basically it comes to be around 1.5 in 10 power 10. So around 15 billions. So if I just estimate the room temperature, so this Ni comes to be around 1.5 into 10 power 10 per centimeter cube, carriers per centimeter cube. So this per centimeter cube. So that's as a room temperature, intrinsic carrier concentration. This is at the room temperature. Intrinsic carrier concentration at room temperature. So you can estimate, maybe if you want, you can try out for, okay, so because the Eg also changes with the temperature. So let me give the expression for Eg, the band gap for, let's say, for the silicon.
Sir, what were P and N?
Oh, P is N is a concentration. So these are the concentration. Number of charge, number of holes in per unit volume, concentration of hole, and this is a concentration of electrons. So whenever there is a thermal agitation, the electrons come out with covalent bond broke. Let's say all these covalent bonds break, and then you have the electron which releases, which comes out from there, free, becomes a free, and at the same time there's an it leaves a vacancy, that positive charge vacancy, which we call as a hole. This is all. This is a concept for the hole right now. Okay, so it means at the same time, what you're getting, you are going to have a, so if we look into over the time, if you look over the time and thermal equilibrium, you'll find out the concentration of holes and the concentration of the electron the same, and that which we call as an P and which is equals to N, and that let's define it as an Ni, which is a carrier concentration, intrinsic carrier concentration, and that depends on the temperature. Okay. Okay, for case of silicon, the band gap we can write down Egt, that's the temperature at 0 Kelvin minus alpha T square T plus beta. You don't need to remember it. I just would like to just give you what I mean to say here. So for Eg at 0 electron volt, this is in electron volt. I'm just giving for the silicon. So this alpha Ag0. Okay, for silicon it's 1.166. Alpha is around 0.473, and that's in a electron volt per Kelvin unit. And then beta, since the temperature, so it will be in unit of temperature only. So that's around 636 Kelvin. So this is for case of silicon. And same way, there's also numbers for the, so it means for silicon we can estimate the room temperature, what with the at room temperature, the band gap, you can find it out, and also you can estimate at the other temperature what happens for the band gap for the silicon. So I think if there's a plot, basically it's decreases as the increase the temperature. So that's a band gap for, I think, so let me see if I have, it'd be good if we can see. No, I don't have with me right now. I think I'll share with you that this is something like, yeah, it's something like this. It changes, the band gap changes with the, it's not very sharp, but this changes decreases with the temperature, right? So that's the reason for many silicon devices. Let's say when you look into the, if you want to operate a very high temperature, so the properties that you were designed, let's say it may not behave, because whatever the electronic devices you make out of, whether it's a diode, whether it is your transistors, So transistor means like either standalone device like a BJT or integrated like a FAT. So basically all your, whether it's a laptop or calculator, everything is based on to the this combination, because your all devices, CPU, each everything is made of the field effect transistors using a CMOS technology. That's complementary metal oxide, basically FAT. So they are made on silicon. All everything is a silicon. So it means whenever you are changing that, if the temperature is changing, surrounding temperature is changing, right? So it may affect the performance of the device as well. So you'll find out that other than, as I mentioned to you, if we operate, let's say high speed, let's say very a video, or we play a video game, that's different. They generate the heat because of the wires. But if you take the system which is, let's say, into the, let's say, in temperature zone, more than very high temperature zone, and if there is no kind of insulation is provided to the system, right, to the system, in the sense, let's say lab, if you just keep it open, let's say, right, if right now it is all everything is a package, we open that, you'll find out the performance may not be the same. So people are also nowadays also looking into some more material systems, as I mentioned to you. So where we can go for a specific application for where, let's say, they can sustain for high temperature. If you go very low temperature, let's say if you want to operate, let's say laptop, it's a less than 0 degrees centigrade outside, right? You may have slightly may not it will behave in a different way, the device. And if we are taking the same device at the, let's say, very high temperature, maybe 55 or 60, 55 degrees centigrade, may behave in a different way, right? So of course there is always a pros and cons, so one has to overcome with the finding through the engineering solutions. So that's the story onto the silicon for intrinsic. Now since your carrier concentration is out of 1.5 and 10 power 10, so it's not that very big loss for to constitute a really very reasonable current. So what one has to do, one has to then dope the system, and that's the way we make extrinsic semiconductors. So we create a doping into the system. Doping in the sense we bring the we can have two type of dopings into the system. So we create an extrinsic semiconductor. That semiconductor we call as an extrinsic semiconductors. So it means you are doping into the intrinsic semiconductors. Just a pure element, silicon only, so pure intrinsic semiconductor, right? And then you create an extrinsic semiconductor. So basically we have two varieties here. We add the pentavalent impurities into the systems, such as arsenic, antimony, right? And also one can add the trivalent impurities, such as your boron, right, aluminum. So this is the example of, because it's having a 3+ and this is a 5+. Valence means like we can is a valence. So 5+ means it's in a 5 electrons in outermost cell, and there is a 3 electrons in the outermost cell, right? So we can create if we dope it with the pentavalent or trivalent. So in the silicon, so it means you are simply replacing the silicon. Some of the silicon atoms will, let's say, with this, let's say I take an example of simply, let's say, antimony, right? And then you're replacing silicon atoms with the antimony. I just give an example. It may not necessarily that all silicon atoms are replaced with the antimony, but we dope it. So doping depending on to the now this how much doping we do it, right, depends on to the application. Of course, depend on the application. When we create a diode, less normal electronic diode, we have the standard doping profiles, doping concentrations, not very high doping. But in case of, let's say, for high energy or somewhere application, we need a kind of like a large carrier concentration. We can go, generally we replace with the some plus sign. I will explain you what does mean. So let's say you have the antimony here, let's say silicon, and let's say antimony. So these are all. So what's going to happen? So silicon, let's say I'm just generating this four valence for the silicon, and let's say put up silicon, let's say put up silicon, and let's say antimony. Okay, silicon. Okay, so I just made it. Right, let's say this is for and where it is here. Right, okay, let me bring it. So what we have, this is a all now. This goes into covalent bond formation. Right. Okay, this is fine, this is fine, this is okay, this is here, this is here, here, same way here. So what you see here, actually, if you look into this matrix, or that we call matrix, or let's say the arrangement, right? So you get the electrons is shared between these, and but you get the free electrons. So there are free electrons, which is okay. So these are the free electrons, which is because of its pentavalence means 5 valence electrons. So you have one extra electron, so it's a free. So that may also, since it's random motion is going to happen, so you may go with this. But as you, let's say if you are working at a room temperature, some covalent bonds may break out. So other than its intrinsic concentration, now the concentration of the electrons, of course, is increases because you got extra electrons here, right? And the number of holes will be decreases. But at thermal equilibrium, if we look into the case of thermal equilibrium, okay, I will explain this. I think I will move further. So what's happening at thermal? So these atoms, let's say antimony or arsenic, right? Since it donates its electron, since it is coming into the on the silicon matrix and the crystal this matrix, since it donates its electron, so it act as a donor. This we call as a donor. And since it gives its electron to the system, so it's become a positively charged. So this become a positive charge or atom. So it's positive charge atom. So this is the stationary, this is immobile. This is important to understand because it gives you an idea of how when you go into the p-n junction. So a stationary and immobile. So it's a fix with the what's moving, what's movable is electrons. So which are quite in large number, where the holes are, if there is a bond broken, so because of the bond broken, let's say one at room temperature, if this bond is broken, then it gives a one hole here. So holes are in the less concentration. Let's may if I just denote this concentration like with many arrows. So holes are maybe very few. So the majority charge carriers are here. So majority charge carriers are basically the electrons, and the minority charge is the holes.
Sir,
Yes.
What is stationary or immobile?
This atoms.
Okay.
These atoms, antimony which here doped, these foreign atoms, right? It's and impurities. So these are fixed because this goes into the lattice system, is become a bond. So these are fixed. So these are the fixed. They are not moving. What is the moving only? There's this free electrons. If there is supply of thermal energy to the system, then covalent bonds may break. The covalent will break, and then you see the release of some extra electrons. At the same time, you see find out the holes. But since your pentavalent impurities, see the extra electrons already it is there. So number of charge carriers, the majority charge carriers will be simply electrons in this case, where the minority charge carriers will be the holes. Right, and this type of extrinsic semiconductor, which we call as an N-type, So this we call as an n-type, because n-type means because the electrons are majority charge carriers. So it simply signifies n-type means n means considering the number of electrons, or the carrier concentration of the electrons. So we call this an n-type. So this kind of like a exchanging semiconductor, where the pentavalent impurities are doped, we call as an n-type semiconductor, right? And in case of so in case of now for trivalent impurities, so in case of the trivalent impurities, which is, let's say, the boron. So let me put up, let's say, silicon, boron, let's say silicon. Just give an example on this. What's showing with this diagram only. So it means silicon atom is replaced with the boron. So that means, right? So for what you have for so green one, I am showing it with the for the silicon. Right, and then you have for the boron is the trivalent means 3. So this is 3. So it means it's the valence electrons outermost valence electron in the for the boron outermost cell, it's a 3. So it has a tendency to now accept because it has to be going stable, so it has to accept the electrons. It has to be accept the electrons, let's say, from the neighboring. So what's going to happen in this case? That's since it has a tendency to accept the electrons, because it has to build, let's say, because the 3 here, so this makes a bond here, but one side is remain. So maybe here, but this is now vacancy, and we don't have it right now. So it has a tendency now to accept. So the boron atoms, so trivalent impurities, so it has a tendency to accept the electrons, because it has to complete this let's say this bond. So what does it mean? So what is the right now? So there is no kind of like, I would say, this is all fixes concept, let's say, for the whole. So it has tendency to accept. So these atoms we call as a, let's say, boron atoms. This we call as an acceptor atoms. This we call as an acceptor atoms, right? So this we call acceptor atoms. So it means it's become a negatively charged, and these are the fixed, again, stationary.
Positive.
Yes, this is the stationary or immobile. This is a stationary or immobile. So since you can see there is a deficiency of the free electrons, because there is no kind of like a charge carrier. So what is it? It has a tendency to accept the electrons, but at the same time, so what is happening here in this case, the number of charge carriers is basically dominant. Charge carriers is basically dominated by is number of charge carriers will be more. I mean, like, is basically the holes are the dominant charge carriers here. What number? I would say holes are the charge carriers, dominant charge carriers. So the concentration of holes, or let's say P, would be much larger than the concentration of N here, right? It's not intrinsic. So for extrinsic, sometimes people represent a kind of like a circle for extrinsic semiconductors. Same way here in this, we can say this as an let's say So it depends on the different books, has a different notation. So N0 is, let's say, concentration, carrier concentration in extrinsic semiconductor. So this circle means for the extrinsic semiconductor, right? So the minority, so here the majority charge carriers are the holes, where the minority charge carriers are the electrons, and this system we call as a p-type. So p-type semiconductor. So this we call as a p-type semiconductor. Right. So I think if you have a question, I'll stop here, and we can we'll continue tomorrow with the further onto this part, onto, I mean, like how what is the transport phenomena into the semiconductors. I mean, like in the extrinsic semiconductor, whether is I have just explained to you this there is a random collision within, so but there is no definite direction, so we have to give, so that's we have to provide certain external voltages, that's electric field, that give rise to your drift component, and another one is a diffusion component. So I think I'll continue this tomorrow. So in case you have any questions, or we can discuss now.